There are houses that die quietly, and there are houses that refuse to. The one where Michael Whittaker lived did neither. Its walls cracked, but never caved, its windows fogged, but never blacked out, and through all seasons of rain and silence it stayed breathing, a long wooden cage soaked in memory and rot. Michael was born the second son, but he walked like a first. He didn't cry when he came out, and the midwife said that was a good omen. It wasn't. The Whittaker family was already broken long before Michael knew how to spell his name, but he could feel the weight of it, feel it in the dust on every windowsill, feel it in the footsteps that circled the house all night, even when no one was awake. Feel it in the looks the family gave him when his older brother began barking instead of speaking. They didn't choose Michael. He chose himself. He chose to stay when others ran, to clean up after screams, to cook meals for hands that couldn't hold forks, to carry names no one else would remember. He didn't know it then, but the moment he stepped into that role, the moment he called himself the Guardian, he was already buried with them. He just hadn't stopped walking yet. Michael was never taught what love was. He learned it by wiping mouths, by locking doors before someone could wander into the forest again, by picking up broken plates and broken people with the same hands. His family didn't speak right, didn't look right, didn't behave in ways that strangers could understand. But Michael knew them like breath, knew how to calm Silas before the shaking started, knew when Ellie needed to be left alone or gently pulled back from the edge, knew when Ray was about to vanish into the trees again, like a ghost trying to return to dirt. He was their translator, their shield, their unspoken anchor, and he hated it. And he never said it, because hate was a luxury he couldn't afford, because if he allowed himself to feel it, even for a second, the whole house would collapse, and the bloodline would finally go silent. He didn't save them out of pride. He did it because someone had to, and everyone else already left, one by one, like leaves in a storm that never ended. The Whittakers never lived with noise, not the kind you hear in cities or from TV screens. Their noise was different, the kind that lived in the eyes, in the twitch of a lip, in the way someone would sit completely still for hours because their mind was somewhere it couldn't leave. Michael didn't talk much either, not because he couldn't, but because he knew words meant nothing in a place like this. He used to keep a journal, pages filled with observations, food logs, signs of worsening tremors, strange drawings he didn't remember making. Eventually he burned it, said it felt like writing down the weight of ghosts. And ghosts don't need remembering, they're always there. The dogs would howl at nothing, the wind would carry voices that didn't belong to anyone, and sometimes at night Michael would sit alone at the kitchen table, holding a spoon, not eating, just holding because it gave his hands something to do, and it reminded him he was still human, or close enough. Michael tried once to run, not from the family, from the weight, from the stillness that felt heavier than death. He left before the sun rose, walked 5 miles without looking back, found himself in a diner, surrounded by voices that didn't mumble and faces that didn't twitch. He sat at the counter and ordered black coffee. The waitress asked his name and he hesitated because saying Michael meant saying Whittaker, and saying Whittaker meant dragging a century of darkness into a room that wasn't built for it. She asked again, and he left without drinking the coffee, because the truth was, he couldn't leave. Not really. Not because of guilt, not because of love. Because they would die without him. And somehow he knew that if they died, so would he. He went back before the sun set, back to the broken porch, back to the smell of mildew and old blankets, back to a place that didn't love him but needed him. Some people escape their childhood homes and never return. Michael escaped and became the foundation. In the Whittaker house, no one really aged. They just became quieter, slower, more like the house itself. Michael watched his siblings change, not in the way normal people do. There were no birthdays, no candles, no celebrations, just new scars, new habits, new silences. He learned to measure time by who needed help standing, by how often someone forgot how to chew, by which chair creaked louder this winter than it did last. And yet, in all of it, there was a rhythm, a strange harmony that outsiders would never hear. Michael could. He could tell who was in which room by the way the floorboards sighed. He could sense when Ray would stop eating days in advance. He could feel when one of them was going to scream even before the scream left their throat. They were not individuals, not anymore. They were limbs of a dying animal. And Michael was the spine that held it upright. He didn't know what normal families were like, but he imagined they didn't speak through grunts, didn't cry when the chickens stopped laying eggs, didn't huddle together in storms, not because of fear, but because it reminded them they were still alive. Michael never asked to be the one, but the house did, the blood did, the silence did. He carried them through winters with no firewood, through summers where the well went dry, through nights when something outside howled and something inside answered. The town had long stopped asking about the Whittakers, stopped offering help, stopped caring. They said the blood was too tangled to save, that families like his were meant to fade out quietly. But Michael didn't fade. He endured. He stitched together a life from scraps, turned rusted tools into working ones, made food stretch when there was nothing left in the pantry but a prayer. When one of them wandered too far, he always found them. When one of them broke down, he always lifted them back up, not because he was strong, but because he had no other choice. Guardians aren't born, they're made. And Michael was made from wood rot, from cracked mirrors, from whispered names no one says anymore. He didn't protect them with weapons. He protected them with presence. And in a place where the world forgot them, his presence was everything. Years blurred into each other, like rain on a windshield that no longer worked. And still Michael stayed, a man aging beneath the weight of a name no one wanted to speak out loud. His reflection faded before he did. His body creaked like the old floorboards, and his voice became dust, not because he was weak, but because every word he spoke belonged to someone else, someone who could no longer speak for themselves. There came a day when only 3 chairs were needed at the table, then 2, then 1, and Michael still set all of them, still served meals for mouths that no longer ate, still left the porch light on for ghosts that never came back. Because when you are the last, you become the memory, you become the storyteller, the witness, the grave. He never left the house again, didn't need to, because the house had become him. Its walls carried his breath, its shadows walked like he did. Its silence whispered in his voice. Michael Whittaker never asked to be a hero, never got called one, but in a story written in ash and blood, he was the line that never broke, the guardian who never stepped away, the man who stood alone, so no one else had to.